Part 110. Blessed to have each other in this life, Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Liao. Chapter 1095. Sitting on the witness stand, Shibaiki recounted what happened that day. There were a lot of people on the subway at that time. He stood in front of me, holding the railing. Chest. The prosecutor asked, "What was your reaction at that time?" "I'm very disgusted." Shibaiki frowned, showing her disgust undisguised, "but the subway is too crowded, I can't change my position, I want to turn sideways, but he pressed over again, the whole time an arm was on me, on my chest, it was disgusting." "Did you scold him?" the prosecutor then asked. "I don't really remember," Shibaiki said, "I was so angry at the time, I just remember that I scolded a lot, and I can't remember exactly what I scolded." "So what was the other party's reaction at that time? Were you very angry?" "I think so, his face was very red, even his neck was red, he looked like a lunatic who was about to go crazy." Shibaiki seemed to be frightened, and her voice was tense. "I'm very scared. Then I hurried away, but I found that he also got out of the car, as if he was following me. I was terrified. I wanted to go home immediately and took a small path, but I was still caught up by him. He. Shibaiki choked up. "He took out a knife and pressed it against my stomach, asking me to take off my underwear. The prosecutor sighed slightly. It was not good to continue, and said, "Thank you, it's done." When it was Musei's turn to start cross-examination, Musei got up and asked, "Miss Shi, I have read the police report, and you described the environment very carefully, including the street lights 20 meters in front of the street, and the street on both sides. There is a residential area on the side, there are garbage bins nearby, etc., and there are many details." "Yes," the police officer said at the time, that the more detailed the case, the better they would be able to catch the prisoner as soon as possible. "But your description of the suspect is only a fat man wearing glasses." Musei asked her, "Is it a bit too simple?" Shibaiki was a little annoyed, frowned, and said, "When you encounter this kind of thing, don't you still pay attention to what shoes he wears and what hairstyle he has on his head?" Musei pursed her lips, remained silent for a while, and said, "Miss Shi, I sympathize with your experience, but I also hope you can understand that rape is a very serious accusation, and if you accuse the wrong person, you will be punished. It will cause irreparable harm to that person." "I understand." Shibaiki bit her lip, and looked at Zainan, who was not far away. "The person that night was him." "Miss Shi, why are you so sure? Isn't the street light a little far from the crime scene?" "Yes, but the light at that time was enough for me to see his face clearly," Shibaiki said firmly. Musei asked puzzledly, "When he pointed a knife at you, where were your eyes looking? When he asked you to take off your underwear, where were your eyes looking? He asked you to turn around so that you can have sex from behind invading you, where are your eyes looking?" "But I saw him when he was chasing me." Shibaiki's cheeks were flushed, showing an angry expression. "I saw him. It's him. That fat and disgusting ugly man." Musei was silent, as if she was waiting for Shibaiki to calm down her anger. The judge said, "Defense counsel. Your Honor, please allow me to do a small test on Miss Shi in court." Musei said seriously, "It is related to the rationality of her identification of my client." The judge looked at the prosecutor. "Does the prosecution agree to the defense's proposal?" "Prosecutors have no objection." Musei then walked to Shibaiki, pointed to a corner of the auditorium. "Miss Shi, do you know that man? The man sitting in the last row, on the far right." Shibaiki felt baffled. "I don't know." Musei said, "He is the security guard at the gate of the community where you live. He has worked in the community for 2 years, but he is not wearing a uniform today. Blessed to have each other in this life, Shao, your wife is born again." Author, Hua Liao. Chapter 1096. Objection. The prosecutor stood up. Your Honor, the two are completely incomparable. Miss She will certainly be impressed by the criminal, and most of the security guards at the door will not notice the face. Musée I didn't give in. Miss She's so-called deep impression is only the feature of a fat man wearing glasses, just like the uniform on a security guard. When you see someone who meets the requirements, you will substitute it yourself. But no other suspects were found near the crime scene. But you can't rule out that there is another person who fits the fat man with glasses nearby, can you? If you want to say this, any possibility exists, and this assumption is completely meaningless in this case, said the prosecutor. When the defendant was arrested, the victim's underwear was held in his hands. Musée I pursed her lips, thought for a while, and looked at the judge. Your Honor, can you give me 10 minutes? Regarding the prosecutor's question just now, I want to discuss it with my client. The judge looked at Musée I, then at the prosecutor, and finally knocked on the gavel. Adjourn the court for 10 minutes. Thank you. Musée I turned around and quickly returned to her seat. Zainan hurriedly asked, do you need me to testify in court? Why did that pair of underwear appear in your hand? Only you can explain clearly, Musée I whispered to him, but once you appear in court, you will have to face the prosecution's questioning, which may mention your previous crimes, some negative events. Zainan was puzzled. What negative incident? I have no criminal record. Musée I explained, as a sexual crime, prosecutors generally pay attention to the criminal psychology and living habits. For example, some adult audiovisual products you collect may be discussed in court, so you must be mentally prepared. Everyone has that kind of thing. It's not just me. Zainan's face turned red immediately, feeling a little embarrassed. Musée I said seriously, the point is what the jury will think. I will try my best to stop him, but you'd better be mentally prepared, understand? Zainan hesitated. What if I don't testify in court? Musée I thought for a while and said, it's hard to win the trust of the jury if we avoid the key issues. So if I don't appear in court, I'm likely to be found guilty, but if I appear in court, I will face more embarrassing questions. Is that so? Zainan asked her. Musée I pursed her lips, then nodded. That's right. Zainan smiled bitterly. Okay, I will testify in court. After the discussion was settled, Zainan stood up nervously and walked towards the witness stand step by step. As soon as he sat down, before he could speak, his face was already flushed, and his forehead began to sweat. Zainan raised his arm and wiped his sweat. His nervousness could not be concealed. Musée I said, since physical evidence is the key to this case, could you please tell us what happened on the day when the case happened? Okay. Zainan adjusted his mood, but his face was still red. I just finished my social service that day, and I was rushing back from the orphanage. When I transferred to line 2, the subway became very crowded. I thought I accidentally bumped into, I bumped into Ms. She, and I immediately apologized to her. She gave me a hard look, as if she thought I was taking advantage of her, but I swear, I really didn't. Then the subway suddenly turning the corner, I was pinned down by the people around me, and I couldn't control my body and squeezed into Miss She. When he said this, the blush on Zainan's face faded and gradually became snow white, and his expression was also tense. She scolded me. Zainan said, called me a pervert, dirty, a fat house that no one wants, and said I was greasy, more disgusting than a pig. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Blessed to have each other in this life. Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1097. It was very quiet all around, only Zainan's voice. He looked at the jury, twitched his mouth, and smiled wryly. It's nothing. I'm often scolded and I'm used to it. If there are girls around me, I don't even dare to take out my mobile phone. I'm afraid that I will be misunderstood. After all, I grew up like this. Those boys joked with girls, it was humorous, it was fun, and when it was my turn to joke, it was wretched, I understand. So I held back, although I was very angry, but I kept holding back until she finished scolding. The subway arrived at the station, I got off and went home, and then on the way, I thought of the eyes of those people on the subway, and I felt very uncomfortable. I always felt that it shouldn't be like this. I walked to the side of the street and saw a bench, so I sat down and thought, whether I was destined to be like this in my life. Okay, can I change it? My clothes are always greasy because I sweat easily, I gain weight because I always fail to lose weight, I have a high hairline, I am considered bald, it is in the family, I find that I can't change anything, I can only accept. At this time, a tall man came over. Everyone was stunned. Is this another suspect from the previous testimony? Zainan continued, he is also fat, but he is taller and stronger than me. I don't know him, so I ignore him. He sits there and continues to think about life, fate, and other messy things, but the big tall one takes the initiative to follow him. I said hello and he said, hey. Wimpy. A stranger called me a wimp on the street, I was very angry, but the other person was stronger than me, so I was persuaded, and I held back again. At this time, he threw a bunch of things over and said, I'll give you a gift, don't be like a piece of trash next time, that kind of woman is cheap, owe it to me. Zainan exhaled, with a complicated expression, I was stunned and took that thing off my body. The tall man had already left. Only then did I see clearly that it was a pair of women's underwear. Then the police appeared and arrested me. Everyone is silent. For a moment, I don't know whether I feel absurd or sympathetic. All kinds of emotions are submerged in the silence. But frankly, Zainan looked at the jury, I hope I did it, of course, it wasn't to rape her, I wouldn't do that, but I hope I chased that woman and told her I wasn't fat house, I'm not a pervert, and I didn't sexually harass her. I. Zainan pursed his lips, seeming to be a little choked up, if I had the courage, I would be proud of myself even if she sued me, but I didn't. It's the truth. The prosecutor stood up. However, the police checked the nearby users and found no big tall man matching your description, and she has been very firm in identifying it as you. She made a mistake, Zainan said, it's really not me. The prosecutor sighed slightly and sat down again. From his point of view, Zainan was talking completely on his own, with no evidence at all, and nothing to ask. The judge asked both parties whether the proof was over. Muzi turned her head to look at Liao Likan, who was sitting in the auditorium, frowning slightly and shaking her head. Shaking her head may have two meanings, one is that Liao Likan is unwilling to appear in court, the other is that Liao Likan believes that under the current situation, appearing in court will not be conducive to winning the lawsuit. Muzi thought for a while, but did not apply for a summons. The judge tapped his gavel and announced closing arguments in an hour. Zainan was taken down by the bailiff. Before leaving, Muzi comforted him, it will be fine soon. Zainan nodded. Muzi left the court, went to the lounge, and met Liao Likan in the corridor. She was holding a pack of cigarettes, as if she was looking for a place to smoke. Muzi was a little surprised, she didn't know that Liao Likan had the habit of smoking. Liao Muzi called to stop her, smoking is allowed in the front corridor. Blessed to have each other in this life, Mu Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1098. Liao Likan regained her senses and followed Muzi to the front. Smoking is basically prohibited in the entire building of the court, except for personal offices, only the emergency exit corridor. There was a window on one side of the corridor. Liao Likan leaned against the window and took out a lighter and lit a cigarette for herself. Muzi I couldn't help but said, "You still smoke?" "Well, my husband is an old smoker. After being smoked by him for several years, I also started to smoke," Liao Likan said lightly. The lines around her eyes became more depressed in the smog. When this topic was brought up, Muzi I couldn't speak, so she fell silent. At this time Liao Likan asked her, "Are you sure about your closing statement?" Muzi I nodded slightly. Liao Likan looked out the window and said nothing. Just when Muzi I was about to leave, Liao Likan turned her head as if she wanted to say something to her. Muzi I stopped in her tracks, with doubts in her eyes. Liao Likan looked at her quietly, and smiled lightly. "Forget it, we'll talk after you win the case, you go get ready." Muzi I was stunned for a moment, then nodded and left the corridor. Liao Likan was the only one left in the corridor. She exhaled a puff of smoke out of the window and muttered to herself, "I hope I'm wrong." Closing arguments begin with the prosecution. How difficult is it to bring a criminal to justice? We need witnesses, physical evidence, motives, and everything that can be explained reasonably. It is really difficult. Fortunately, this case now has all of them. The prosecutor looked at the jury and said in a cadence, "The cause and effect are very clear, and all physical evidence points to the defendant. Everything before our eyes tells us one fact, that is, the defendant has a grudge against the victim. In the deserted streets, atrocities were committed against the victims. And in order to cover up his crimes, he actually made up an unfounded character, a tall man? No, there was never such a person from the beginning to the end. The victim did not see any tall people, nor did the police, and there was no relevant evidence to support his statement. The defendant made up such a lie, which is a blasphemy to the court and an insult to your IQ. It's a fool. Do you believe him? I really want you to think about it." The prosecutor finished his statement and returned to his seat. After waiting for a long time, there was no response from the defense, so I couldn't help but look at him strangely. Muzi I came back to her senses and realized that she had lost her mind. She actually lost her mind during the trial. Muzi I quickly stood up, adjusted her mood, and temporarily forgot the strange feeling that was circling in her heart just now. The defendant Zainan, why was he arrested? Because of MSG's accusation. But everyone, have you ever thought that the victim, MSG, is really the one who raped her? Muzi I asked the jury, glanced over, and said in a deep voice, "No, she accused the person who was arrested by the police. MSG suffered personal injury, and she was extremely panicked and frightened. At this time, the police informed her to identify the criminal. She seeing a person who looks like a criminal, a fat man with glasses. Most importantly, this person's hands have been handcuffed, the bad guy has been caught, she feels safe, so she believes that this person in front of her is criminal. But remember, the victim really doesn't see the face of the criminal. Maybe she did glance, but really didn't see it. We all have this mentality, why dare not admit it? When we see a greasy man wearing glasses on the road, we will not take a second look at all, and Miss She is the same. She despises such people from the bottom of her heart. She was frightened until the other party took out the knife and pressed it against her stomach. She stared at the knife in horror. How dare she look up at the criminal's face? Blessed to have each other in this life, Mu Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1099. Just now the prosecution said that the evidence in this case is perfect. Music curled her lips and shook her head. I don't think so, because this case still lacks three very important pieces of evidence. The jury members looked puzzled. The proof is over, what is missing? Muzi I glanced at the prosecutor, and then returned her gaze to the jury. First, there is no sperm DNA comparison in this case, because the doctor didn't find semen in Miss She's body. Why not? Maybe she was wearing a condom, maybe the other party didn't ejaculate, Miss she said she didn't know. Second, the doctor found no bruises, contusions, or any scars caused by external force on Ms she's body. Having said this, Musi let out a light breath, feeling a little helpless. There was no semen, no scars, and no residents near the streets heard calls for help or screams. We have no way of knowing what happened in the streets. Are you puzzled? Musa looked at them, paused for a moment, and then said, there is also the most important physical evidence, the missing knife. The police searched the vicinity, but did not find the knife, nor was it in my case. I found it on my body, and the prosecution thought that my client had thrown away the crime tool in advance, but this is too strange, isn't it? Since there is an opportunity to throw away the tools of crime, why not throw away the underwear? He didn't even put it in his pocket, and held it in his hand majestically, sitting on the side of the street, and didn't even have the consciousness to run away after seeing the police. Why? There is only one reason, and that is, he is innocent. Because he was not the perpetrator of the crime, he did not escape, let alone try to hide physical evidence. After Musi finished speaking, she sighed softly, and asked again, are we really going to send him to prison? Just because he's a fat guy with glasses. Musi returned to her seat. The trial is over, and we just need to wait for the jury to come out. Seeing that Liao Likan was still there, Musi walked over to say hello, Mr. Liao, did you have something to say to me just now? Liao Likan was slightly stunned, her eyes drifted, and she said slowly, actually, it's not that important. Is it related to the case? Musi frowned, looking very serious. Liao Likan was silent for a while, then suddenly asked, do you think Shibaiki looks like she was raped before? Looks like, Musi was suspicious, this kind of thing, it's hard to say, at least in court just now, Shibaiki really acted like she had been hurt. Liao Likan asked again, did you observe Shibaiki's expression when Zainan testified in court? Musi frowned and shook her head slowly. When Zainan testified, most people in the court were watching Zainan, including Musi. She was also paying attention to Zainan's performance. If she made a mistake, she, as a lawyer, could make up for it in time. Liao Likan said, look, the courtroom is actually very much like a drama stage. If the person who testifies is an actor, the people below are the audience. The actors in the drama troupe will perform hard on the stage. When they are downstairs, they will habitually observe others. Perform, so focused and serious that you forget your own performance. Musi vaguely understood something, her eyes widened slightly, as if she couldn't believe it. When Zainan was testifying, Shibaiki had been observing him. Liao Likan said, as a victim, seeing the rapist making sophistry in court, he should be very angry, right? But Shibaiki was very calm and just looked at Zai intently. Nan did not show any disgust or antipathy. Musi murmured, you mean, Zainan and Shibaiki are actually in the same group? I'm not sure. Liao Likan glanced at her and said calmly, I wanted to tell you just now, but I didn't want to affect your closing statement. Maybe I misunderstood it? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Blessed to have each other in this life, Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1100. Liao Likan said that maybe she was wrong. Maybe the reason why Shibaiki was so focused was because she was calm enough to find out the unreasonableness in Zainan's testimony. Liao Likan had no evidence, she was just guessing. However, Musi was inclined to guess this way. She has been feeling something wrong since just now, an indescribable feeling, a weird, uncoordinated sense of disobedience. Why did Shibaiki want a public trial? Why did Zainan give a long speech on the witness stand? Is it an expression of true feelings, or a draft memorized long ago? Liao Likan patted her on the shoulder. Don't think about it, you are just a lawyer now, and winning this lawsuit is enough. Muzi I felt that what Liao Likan said was right, but at the same time she felt that what she said was wrong. She wanted to concentrate on thinking, but her mind was a little confused. At this moment someone came and informed her that the jury had returned. This time it was very fast. Muzi I suddenly didn't want to know the result. Walking into the courtroom, the jury handed over the result to the judge. The judge announced that he was not guilty of the charges against Zainan, and Zainan was released in court. She won again. Zainan held her hand excitedly, said thank you over and over again, blushed and sweated as usual, and at the same time showed the ecstasy of washing away the grievances. Muzi I couldn't tell what kind of mood she was in. She should be happy for Zainan, but when she thought that the simple and honest smiling face in front of her at this moment, even a somewhat silly smiling face, was a kind of disguise and performance, Muzi I felt extremely uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. He once asked her if she believed him, and she chose to believe it, but it turned out, he lied to her. Muzi I didn't hate or be annoyed, but just felt chilled. When they walked out of the court, all the reporters outside surrounded them, and the bodyguard blocked the crowd for Muzi I. She walked out silently, with an indifferent expression, without saying a word. Even if she wins the lawsuit, she doesn't feel happy at all. She noticed that the reporters also surrounded Zainan and Shibiki. She didn't want to look at the expressions on the faces of the two of them at all, so she ordered the bodyguards on the side, call him over when it's over. The bodyguard said yes. Muzi I went to the parking lot and sat in the car, thinking about it silently. After a while, someone tapped on the car window. Muzi I looked up, and outside the car window was Zainan's smiling face of a good old man. Zainan drove the door and sat in, and asked Muzi I, what's the matter? Muzi I thought for a while, and said to the driver and bodyguard in front, you guys go down first. Zainan looked confused, watched the driver and bodyguard get out of the car, and asked curiously again, is there anything important you want to tell me? Muzi I didn't know how to speak for a while. She was silent for a long time, and asked him, do you know Shibiki? Zainan was stunned, no. I don't know you. Having said that, there was faint sweat on his forehead, and he subconsciously avoided his gaze, feeling awkward. Muzi I couldn't help clenching her fingers. She was ruthless, and asked, Zainan, you have participated in 5 judicial examinations, so you should be very clear about what Article 307 of the criminal law is, right? Zainan's expression was tense, and he let out a deep hum. Zainan, tell me, what is Article 307 of the criminal law? Muzi I asked. Zainan didn't speak. Muzi I sternly called his name, Zainan. Zainan's lips moved, and he lowered his head. The crime of false litigation, filing a lawsuit based on fabricated facts, obstructing the judicial order or seriously infringing on the legal rights of others, shall be sentenced to fixed-term imprisonment of not more than 3 years and a fine, between 1 and 7 years imprisonment and a fine. Muzi I took a deep breath and said, you go and surrender. Zainan suddenly raised his head and looked at her in disbelief. Why? Isn't it good now? You won the lawsuit, gained fame, and I got what I wanted. We both win. Isn't this great? Blessed to have each other in this life. Mu Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1101. Zainan said that this is a win-win situation. I didn't harm anyone, and I didn't cause anyone to suffer. He repeatedly emphasized, I didn't harm anyone. But you used me, Muzi I shouted in a low voice. How can this be considered taking advantage? Zainan panicked, and explained seriously, I was indeed wronged, right? I didn't rape her, So you defended me, isn't that reasonable? How could it be considered taking advantage of her? This is not taking advantage, this is helping. He didn't understand why Musei's face was so ugly, and he said again, you can defend those who have committed crimes, why is it taking advantage of me to defend? Why can't you help me? Zainan's words sounded harsher to Musei's ears. She felt that something was wrong, maybe she shouldn't ask him to get in the car at all, let alone ask him these words. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Musei took a deep breath and said, Zainan, get out of the car. Zainan showed embarrassment on his face. After sitting for a while, he hesitated and said, will you report me? Musei pursed her lips tightly and said nothing, her expression was also tense. You really want to report me? Zainan couldn't believe it. Seeing Musei's expression, Zainan only felt that she had the intention of destroying relatives righteously, and couldn't help showing a bit of anger on her face. Do you know how difficult it is for a person like me to gain a firm foothold in jingling? I have taken the exam 5 times. I am almost 30 years old, and I don't know how many times I have to take the civil service exam. The best way out in the future is to do lawyer, but did you know that no teacher is willing to write me a letter of recommendation? He took a deep breath, his face flushed, and after a while, he continued, I may not even be able to graduate. Last semester, I needed to retake 2 courses. I begged everywhere and talked to the teacher, but it was useless. I have been doing live broadcasting for half a year without success. I have tried everything I can, but it is all useless. It is all useless. Are you doing a live broadcast? Musei looked at him, just make a fake lawsuit for this. Just for this, Zainan imitated her tone, and smiled self-deprecatingly, you don't like this, do you? I know, you don't understand, you have the ability and resources, how can you understand the difficulties of ordinary people? His expression gradually turned cold, you report it, anyway, I have no future, and Shibiki, the younger brothers and sisters in the family rely on her to earn tuition fees, but she has worked hard in jingling for so many years, and she is still just an extra. After sending the money, the rest is not enough to pay the rent, so report it and send her and me to jail. Get out of the car, Musei didn't want to hear any more. Zainan pursed his lips tightly and took a deep breath. He opened the car door and was about to get out of the car. Musei turned to look at her, are we, still friends? Musei didn't look at him, and said, we've never been friends. Zainan's face suddenly turned extremely ugly. Okay. He nodded, you're right, we've never been friends. The car door closed, and Zainan left without looking back. Musei sat quietly in the car, closing her eyes weakly. Look what she did. She actually participated in a sham lawsuit. Those suspicious testimonies and the disappearing physical evidence are all performance venues arranged by Zainan for her, just waiting for her to take the initiative to perform for him. It's just. Musei hugged her head in frustration, her mood fell to the bottom, extremely depressed. Want to expose them? If there is no evidence for this kind of thing, it will not be investigated. What's more, she helped someone win the lawsuit and then reported him. What would people think? Would you think she was involved too? The negative news surrounding her has just subsided, is it necessary to make waves again for this matter? All kinds of thoughts flooded his mind, and Musei was extremely annoyed. Blessed to have each other in this life, Mu Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1102. When he returned home, Murong Cheng was on the phone. It sounds like he is telling Wang Zhan to build a children's playground on the island, with swings, slides, seesaws and other children's toys. Musei thinks it's too early, it's really unnecessary, children can only play those facilities when they are at least 3 or 5 years old, and now the child is less than a month old in the womb. But Murong Cheng has been following a demon lately, and he can't persuade him at all, so Muzi doesn't bother to talk about it. When she returned to the room, she was very tired. In fact, she didn't do any physical activity today, but she just felt tired. It seems to be particularly easy to feel tired after pregnancy. Muzi kicked off her shoes annoyedly, and lay down on the bed. Staring dryly at the ceiling, after watching it for a while, he suddenly remembered the live broadcast link Zainan shared in the class group. His chest seemed to be blocked, and he was very depressed. She took out her phone, rummaged through the chat history, and clicked on the link. The page immediately redirected to a live broadcast website. Zainan had already uploaded many short videos. Muzi clicked on one of them casually. In the video, Zainan was serious about popularizing legal knowledge. It can be seen that he worked very hard to make the video effect appear close to the people, carefully prepared the props, and deliberately interspersed jokes as adjustments during the process, but the whole process was still very boring. The number of clicks displayed in the lower right corner is pitifully small, and the message is either 0 or 1 or 2 advertisements. Just for this? Is it worth his trouble to get a fake lawsuit? Muzi really didn't understand. However, since Zainan did this, there must be follow-up plans. There are also some recommended live channels below. Muzi clicked on one casually. There were people talking and singing, and the subtitles were swiped up from time to time. She was still confused after watching it for a long time. WTF? Murong Cheng walked in, leaning over to Muzi's side. Why are you watching the live broadcast? A classmate is making this. Muzi curled her lips. I don't understand what's the point of this. Would anyone like to watch this? It's better to watch a movie. Murong Cheng smiled. The live streaming industry is very deep. It has just emerged in the past 2 years. It is normal for people who do well to earn hundreds of thousands a month. Muzi was shocked, her eyes widened. That's it, hundreds of thousands a month. Well, there are also anchors with a monthly income of several million. Murong Cheng patted her head. It's nothing to be surprised at. There are people on the pyramid in every industry, but live broadcasting is a new thing. You haven't come into contact with it, that's all. I know several friends who are ready to invest in this. Muzi thought for a while, and asked him, you mean that young Master Gu also invested? Among Murong Cheng's friends, only Gu Liang was related to media and entertainment. Murong Cheng. If you get a certain amount of exposure in the news, how much will your income increase? Muzi humbly asked for advice. Why don't you call and ask Gu Liang? Murong Cheng said, who is Gu Liang? I have lost my memory, so I don't know him. Muzi hit him. Don't make trouble. Young Master Gu's younger brother came over on the day of the wedding. Murong Cheng avoided the topic. There will be no direct increase in income, but there will be potential business opportunities. It depends on how to operate reasonably and convert the exposure rate into effective benefits. After finishing speaking, he continued in a disgusted tone, you won't understand even if I tell you, pregnant woman, please stop worrying. Muzi also felt bored. The matter has come to this point, and further research will not change anything. Going to school the next day, Muzi didn't see Zainan, so she asked the classmates around her, but no one knew what happened. After class, someone in the class suddenly mentioned, Zainan seems to have suspended school. Another person said, there is nothing he can do. After all, the internship will start next school year, and those who have no grades will not be able to graduate. It seems that he still needs to retake 2 subjects. The training institute says it takes 2 years to graduate. In fact, many people can't graduate after a few years of delay. In the end, they can only find other jobs. Everyone was discussing in one go, but Muzi listened silently. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Blessed to have each other in this life, Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Liao. Chapter 1103. In addition to the news of Zainan's suspension from school, everyone also talked about Mu Zi's lawsuit. Mu Zi just doesn't know. On the way home after class, I randomly flipped through today's news, and as expected, I saw news about the lawsuit. Although it is not a headline, it has quite a lot of space. After all, Mu Zi is like a star now, and everything related to her will be magnified. In the news, in addition to the media's praise for her, some reporters also focused their attention on the defendant and the victim, especially Zainan's self-statement in court, which resonated with some groups. Because of her appearance, she is discriminated against, no girls like her, and she has no friends. No matter how lively her personality is, she is finally forced to be withdrawn and reticent by reality, living in this world cautiously like a snail. Netizens left messages one after another, telling how they had been mistaken for a cesium wolf on the bus, or a thief, and similar injustices. Many people are cheering for Zainan, hoping that he can cheer up from now on. On the other side, Shibaiki's situation is slowly improving. At first, many people scolded her on the internet, but later turned the tide, thinking that Shibaiki's initiative to ask for a public trial of the rape case was very brave, and called on the female group to speak out bravely and refuse to be silent when facing rape, etc. Looking at these scattered news, Mu Zi thought, this is probably the operation or marketing that Murong Cheng mentioned. When the matter developed to this point, Mu Zi understood that Zainan had achieved his goal. The number of his online live broadcasts continued to grow, and the small videos he shot began to gain views, and some female fans affectionately called him Otaku brother. Whether he made money or not, Mu Zi didn't know, but he did gain popularity. Maybe it's just like what he said, almost 30 years old, if you don't give it a try, there is really no hope. It's just the way of blogging that disgusted Mu Zi. Now that the matter has come to an end, she feels that she should let it go and stop thinking about it. As the days entered May, Mu Zi began to have some pregnancy symptoms, and retching in the morning almost became a routine. Fortunately, her symptoms are relatively mild, unlike some pregnant women who vomit almost endlessly, and her appetite is still normal. Murong Cheng was very proud of this, and said, as expected of me, I know that I love my woman. Mu Zi couldn't laugh or cry. The little guy in her stomach temporarily attracted her attention, and Mu Zi no longer remembered the last false lawsuit, nor did she care about Zainan's final outcome. She counted the days and concentrated on preparing for pregnancy, thinking that when the baby was 3 months old, she would tell her friends the good news. At this moment, Yu Yang received a phone call unexpectedly. On the phone, Yu Yang's voice was slightly hesitant, and he asked, "Did anything happen to you recently?" Mu Zi laughed. Her first reaction was, how did Yu Yang know that she was pregnant? But after thinking about it, I felt wrong again. Because she was less than 3 months pregnant, she didn't even tell Zhuangjia and Zhang Xinyuan, so it was impossible for Yu Yang to know. So what does he mean by asking now? What's wrong? Mu Zi asked suspiciously. I'm fine here. Yu Yang said, do you still remember the black roses you received some time ago? There was a murder case in the city today. We just found out that the deceased received a bouquet of black roses about 2 weeks ago. Mu Zi, you have to be careful, I don't think it's a coincidence. Mu Zi held the phone in his hand, but he didn't react for a while. How did that person die? She asked. Cut the throat, Yu Yang said, but it's not in the bathtub, it's in the living room of my home. As for whether the murderer is an imitator or Black Rose himself, the criminal psychology experts of the police station are still studying. Blessed to have each other in this life, Mu Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1104. It took a long time for Mu Ziyi to regain her voice. Yu Yang, if there is any progress in this case, can you tell me? I suspect, it may have something to do with me. This is actually against the rules. Prosecutors or the police are strictly forbidden to disclose the case they are investigating to the outside world, including family members. Moreover, Yu Yang has always been very principled in his work. But this is really weird. If it is really related to music, then the transparency of information is very important. Yu Yang thought about it for a while, and said, "Okay, I will call you if there are new developments in the follow-up investigation, and you should be more careful." Mu Ziyi gave a low. When this call came, Mu Ziyi had just finished class and was about to go back. Now that the call is over, she stands on the campus, feeling a little hesitant for a moment. After hesitating for a while, Musa sat down on the bench by the roadside. Her mind was in a mess. She just felt that at some point, she had been placed in an invisible net. Yu Yang said that the deceased received the black roses about 2 weeks before she was killed, but it has been almost 2 months since she received the bouquet and she has been safe and sound. Was it because the opponent had no way to attack, so he shifted his target, or was this originally the opponent's plan? Mu Ziyi sat for a long time, unable to figure out many things. She heard someone calling her name, looked up, it was Liao Liqin. Liao Liqin raised her eyebrows unexpectedly, and walked over. "Why are you sitting here? There is still class in the afternoon." Mu Ziyi shook her head, "Not anymore." Liao Liqin didn't say anything, and sat down at the other end of the bench. The weather in May is warm and pleasant. The sun shines from the lush tree crowns, and the spots of light fall. Sitting quietly like this, I feel that time seems to pass very slowly. Occasionally, some students pass by and when they see them, they will politely shout, "Hello, Teacher Liao." Liao Liqin nodded slightly. After sitting for a while, Liao Liqin asked Mu Ziyi, "Have you contacted Zinan recently?" Mu Ziyi sighed slightly, "I didn't contact you after the trial." After hearing this, Liao Liqin knew that her guess at the beginning had come true. Otherwise, with Zinan's personality, he would definitely keep in touch with Mu Ziyi, even if he occasionally sends holiday greetings online. He seems to be doing well recently, and he already has his own column. Liao Liqin said, "I saw someone sharing the link to his column in the graduation group. If you are interested, you can check it out." Mu Ziyi slightly twitched the corner of her mouth, and smiled faintly. "I've seen it before, it seems to be popularizing legal knowledge." "Really, it seems to be different now." Liao Liqin's tone was a little mocking. "I have started to analyze the case, and the few cases you have fought have not been left behind." Mu Ziyi frowned, and immediately felt a chill, extremely uncomfortable. The indirect popularization of legal knowledge through case analysis is of course much more interesting than monotonous textbooks. Especially for those strange and major cases that appear in the news, reporters usually only know the outline and don't know the details, but Zinan uses the mode of reasoning to show it in the live broadcast, which can easily whet the audience's appetite. But isn't it another kind of use to rub the heat? "I said earlier that his mind is not on his studies," Liao Liqin said coldly, "it's too utilitarian." If it was before, Mu Ziyi would probably speak for Zinan. She would say that Zinan was not too utilitarian, but that this society was too utilitarian. Every day when she opened her eyes, she would eat, ride in a car, pay utility bills, and rent. It was the sense of urgency in life that forced people to become utilitarian. But now, Mu Ziyi didn't want to say a word. She looked at the students coming and going on the campus, looked at the bright sunshine in May, and finally just sighed faintly.